From Collins House, Dominic Alafaci, good morning to you.
Good morning, Darren. Good morning, Emily.
Hey, what happened overnight, Dominic?
Overnight, we saw the Dow Jones Industrial Average put on 0.7 or 289 points to a healthy 42,052, whilst the S&P 500 rose 0.141% to a little bit under their higher for the year, and the Nasdaq was 0.8% higher. Across the Atlantic, London's FTSE put on 67 points or 0.83% to 8,177, with the French, German and Italian bourses all stronger. Gold was steady at $2,749.20 an ounce, and West Texas Intermediate put on 23 cents, and Brent crude put on 29 cents to $73.10 US a barrel. And the Aussie dollar is slightly... Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, gold. How much was gold when you started in the business, Dominic?
$400 an ounce, I think. So it's $2,700 now. It's gone up a lot. I actually when I first started in the business, probably $200 an ounce, to be honest with you.
I reckon around 200.
Yeah, when I started doing the radio, it was $400. I remember when I was on Ernie's program, we used to talk about it being around 450 and 440. They were sort of big days. $450 an ounce. Anyway, West Texas Intermediate was 23 cents higher, as I said, and the $8 is lower against greenback slightly and is currently buying 65.59 US cents. And the ASX 200 SPY is 36 points higher, pointing to a positive start to the week following yesterday's effort, where our market lost 41 points to close the session at 8,119.
Dom, what were the popular shares when you were first in the business? Just following on from DJ's question about what gold was worth back in the day. What was there the rush on when you were starting out?
I was too young for the Poseidon boom, but I would say, look, in the old days, I am getting old now, I think buying the resources, BHP, Rio Tinto, CRA, the banks, obviously some of the banks. And then when the first Telstra float came out and the CBA float came out, there were a few other ones that didn't do as well as we would have liked, but the main brand names in Australia have proven to be pretty good. However, I'm reminded by my research houses all the time that whilst we've done very, very good, and CSL's another great example, you still can't beat international shares in terms of Australia's always lagged, done very well. We've got to be patriotic, but you shouldn't have all of your eggs in one basket. Despite the terrific dividend imputation benefits we get in Australia, you still lag the US, basically. We always will.
Fair call. By the way, the lines are open. If you have any questions for Dominic, 133 693, 133 693. How are all your funds performing at Collins House? Because the figures are unbelievable at the moment. I was looking at.
Yeah, it's a bit embarrassing. I just got the last month's figures. Our high growth portfolio is doing over 24, nearly 25%. But I've got to tell people it's exceptionally high. I think, half that, if not less. So some of the other ones, in the 8s and the 10s and the 17s. So we're having a terrific period at the moment. Good time to dollar cost average in. Don't put too much money in one go. Do it over a couple of months, just in case there's a bit of a downturn. But speaking of, considering you're at the races right now, I've done some research from Strategas research partners in the US. They've come up with a chart that shows if there is a Republican president and a Democrat controlled Congress, it's the worst possible outcome for the S&P 500. If you have a divided Congress, it's the Republicans and the Democrats break basically even, and you have a Democrat president or a Republican president, it doesn't matter too much. The returns are quite high, actually. 13.6% would be the average annual S&P 500 performance since 1933, except for, I think, the COVID period they pulled out. There's not a lot of difference if you have a divided or a mixed Congress, but gee, the last thing you want to do is have a Democrat, according to the history, have a Democrat-controlled Congress and either a Democrat president or a Republican president. It's 4.9% as opposed to 13.7%. So it's quite an interesting chart, and I would suggest people want to look at it. It's Strategas, STRAGEGAS, Research Partners. This was published on the 5th of November 2023, and it's quite an interesting chart.
Interesting. Neil has called through. Good morning, Neil.
How you going, Darren? I'd like to ask Dominic a question about superannuation.
Go ahead, Darren.
Yep, I'm 64 now, 65 next May, and I'm drawing a pension at the moment. I'm fully retired, and I'm drawing a pension at the moment. Is 4% the maximum you can draw at 64?
No. That's the minimum. You can draw all your money out of your super fund once you've retired after age 60, and it's tax-free unless you've got a special sort of super fund that has got unpaid taxes in it. But 95% of the population can draw all of their super out in a drip feed or in a lump sum or a combination of the two anytime they like after age 60 if they're retired tax-free.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, if you take too much out, you can put it back into another super fund, another account within the same fund, an accumulation account, all the way up to age 75. So it's quite a weird system. They've changed the rules a few years ago, and people scratch their heads and sometimes get splinters because, like me, I couldn't understand why they changed the rules. But it's more flexible now.
Good on you. Thanks for the call.
The limit on your super.
There's a limit on your super. Everyone can have up to $1.9 million tax-free in the way I just described it. Over that, between 1.9 and 3 million, they're still working out. It's a slightly taxed environment. If you're lucky to have more than 3 million in super, they're still working out the penalties they're going to impose on you for working too hard, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what they do. Hey, thanks, Neil, for the call. More calls coming up. Leah, live at Flemington at 9 to 10. Paul, good morning.
Morning, Darren and Dominic. Dominic, I was just going to ask you a question. I'm nearly going to pay my loan off with the bank for a couple of rental properties. I've been told when they give your assets back because they're holding them as collateral, you can only get it digitally now. I was going to ask them for my paper things back.
Yeah, Paul, you're a man of my own ilk. I like to get the paper old-fashioned titles because they're quite colourful, and if it's an older property, you can see who's on the back, who's owned it over the last 50 or 100 years. But these days, they've all been replaced by a digital system. So you might be able to get an original copy, but it's worthless. You have to get the official one is a digital one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm a bit old school. But
Is the property very old?
From the early 70s, late 60s, I think.
Oh, okay. Look, it's not. It's still good to know that if you're a bit of a sticky beak, who owned it before you did. But when there are older properties, it's fascinating to see, in 1890 or 1900, if it's an older building, who bought it and what it was used, a bottle shop, a brothel, a chemist shop. It's all the different history on the back. It's quite amazing.
Yeah,
thanks,
it would
Paul.
be. Thanks very much.
No worries. To Annette, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Darren and Dominic. My question is around exceeding the $30,000 superannuation contributions. If due to circumstances, I think I might go over it, is it better to still go over and be taxed that extra on your extra contributions, or is it better to stop your contributions once you get to the 30?
Okay. It's always best to stop your contributions before you go over the limit. That's the first thing. But if you have, you might, with the help of a good financial advisor or accountant, you may be able to get the tax office to treat the excess amount as what we call a non-concessional contribution. That's the first thing. But secondly, if you've got less than $500,000 in super, you may be able to qualify for a higher limit if you haven't put the full amount in the previous years. So it's not a very.
I've already done that, unfortunately.
You've done that, okay. Well, try and get.
I'm over the 500, so I just
And then if you can stop it. If it's gone too far, see if you can convert it into. Or if you leave it in there, you just pay extra tax. But it'd be easier, I think, if you were able to negotiate to get that treated as a non-concessional. That means you don't get a tax deduction for it, so you pay the personal tax yourself. And it's good to boost your super with a few extra non-concessional contributions from time to time.
Thanks for the call. To Paul, good morning. Hello, Paul.
Hey,
to
Paul.
Jan, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Darren and Dominic. I have one question. Do I need to inform the superannuation of my husband now that he has gone into aged care? We still own the home together and we're still a married couple.
Not really. Not really. If your husband, obviously he's permanently, he's retired completely. So if he's already in pension mode, I don't think you need to tell them anything. Perhaps if you have a power of attorney, it might be a good idea to have one. If you don't have one, get one done whilst your husband's still competent, if it's possible. Perhaps shoot that off to the super fund so you can act on his behalf. But I can't think of anything that you need to do unless he is in accumulation mode. So has he started an income stream?
Yes, many years ago.
Then I think I would just go ahead.
Yeah. Also, we have already given them power of attorney and all those paperwork that they required.
Oh, you've done the good work. All right, thanks, Jan. We've got to move on because we've come to the end of the hour, Dominic. We've run out of time. Lovely to chat to you, Dominic.
Yeah,
we'll do it again
here.
soon.
Look forward to seeing you next time.
See you, Emily.